Hello everyone and welcome to the NPC Dungeon. Today I have a story that begins right where last week's left off. I'll go ahead and put a link and a card to that video down below and up above in case you want to get caught up on it. But if you don't, that's fine too. I'll do a quick recap of it in a second like I usually do. But first, I want to make a quick announcement. Starting next week, I will not be telling stories anymore on this channel for a little while. I'll be taking a brief break from them. I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. But here for a little while, I'm going to take a little bit of a break on stories. I'll still be giving plenty of DM advice though, and I'll still be releasing my short videos as usual. But since it's the last story that I'll be telling for a little while, let's make it a good one. So let's get started. So what happened? Well, this story takes place in my current campaign, which is set in the underground city of Volgoldir. Millennia ago, a vast cataclysm rendered the overworld uninhabitable, forcing everyone to go underground. My players were investigating the recent decrease of the city's ooze population and followed this threat to a cave mouth west of the city, where they were told oozes were leaking through to search for work. Gum, the party's resident ooze, was the first on the scene and spotted a speck of light high above. It looked as though it would presumably lead to the surface, followed by everyone else when they were promptly attacked by displacer beasts. Gum revealed an affliction that they carry, transforming into a giant were-lizard and partially losing their mind. The party is forced to flee as the displacer, a contact of Gum's who hunts these creatures, arrived on the scene, and this is where we begin. The rest of the party waited outside until the interior of the cave grew quiet, and they felt safe enough to return. Upon entry, though, it wasn't just quiet, it was empty. All sense of life were gone, including Gum. After investigating, they found a narrow gap in one of the walls and decided to check it out. Chleo sent her bird inside and saw Gum and the displacer talking. As it turns out, the displacer had suspected that Gum was infected with this form of lycanthropy for a while now, and informed them that there were rumors of others who lived above ground still, who were similarly infected. This of course only doubled Gum's intentions of seeing the surface, of returning to it for the first time in centuries. And when the party regrouped, Gum announced this intention and began to leave, but received some pushback. The other party members claimed that they had jobs to do, and had to be together to do them, while others said that they had time. But Gum was going with or without them. V agreed and the two set off, actually rescuing a baby displacer beast from a gang of insects attacking it. But Chleo and Lila decided to give it some thought as they prepared for another quest they had in mind. After all, there was the ball upcoming, and they needed to change of clothes. They arrived at a familiar clothing store, only to find it pretty much empty except for the owner, while another clothing store, a new one, was booming. Cleo offered her services and the old shopkeeper agreed, saying that she wanted that new clothing store dealt with by any means Cleo thought necessary. So she grabbed one of the explosives she'd bought from Mobile Counter, a gnomish shopkeeper they were friends with, and headed over. Lila spared Cleo a questioning glance, saying, "Cleo, what are you doing?" And in that time, the surrounding crowd had become wise to what was going on. They grabbed at Cleo as Lila slipped away, and it wasn't long before the shopkeeper came out, politely told Cleo that this wasn't necessary, and let her go. Angry and embarrassed, Cleo went back to join up with the rest as Lila returned home to practice her guitar. But she couldn't shake the feeling that she was alone and began to feel a little guilty for the argument earlier. She returned to the cave mouth and signaled to Gum, who climbed back down and helped the rest up as they returned. And before long, they breached the surface, catching sight of a wide desert wasteland, lined with cracks and canyons and dotted with ancient skeletons the size of buildings. A speck of dim light pierced in from the overhead cloud cover. They took deep breaths as they stared in awe at the gloomy landscape before them. Their lungs ached as the poisonous air took hold, and lightning struck from above as the clouds broke through, and rainwater poured down. They fought through the storm, blinded and soaked, until arriving at a deep fissure in the ground. They ran inside, beneath an overhang, and into a dark cave. Within this cave, the smell of burning embers and roaring fire drew them in closer until they came across a figure dressed in a mask with a large gauntlet in one hand and two automatons at his side. A new player had joined about this time, and his character, Isaac, worked for a weapons company that apparently knew about the surface. He had heard tales of lycanthropes living up here and thought that they could help him find a cure for his daughter, who had been afflicted and was dying. They rested, all except for Cleo, who tossed and turned in a feverish haze, worrying about the bite. When Gum transformed previously, they'd accidentally bitten her. She hadn't transformed yet, but she couldn't say why. She woke to her bird sitting on her shoulder and looking down at her. She closed her eyes and shook her head and it was gone. She bolted to her feet and listened, hearing only the rhythmic dripping of water into a puddle. And after going to investigate, she looked in and saw her reflection, only it wasn't quite her. It laughed at her, saying she was easy to fool. "We'll have fun together, you and I. Oh, the destruction we'll cause." And just like that, it disappeared. Leo called out, but to no response, and the rest of her sleep was fitful at best. Gum, however, awoke with intention. They would sneak ahead and scout out the way for everyone else, and as they did, they came across a massive conglomeration of oozes, all different shapes, and screaming screaming out with different voices. A pair of blinking lights flashed in from inside the mass, and Gum tried to speak to them, but they were no longer capable of speech, so Gum flew into a barbarian rage as their forms swelled, and they grappled with the mass, subduing it and holding it within their bag of holding. On a cursory glance down the rest of the cave, they spotted another ooze wearing the robes of a monk and sitting down in deep meditation. Gum tried to speak to her, but she gave no reply. They spent the rest of the night waiting as the rest of the group awoke and continued down the cave looking for Gum. They were used to their ooze companions sneaking off like this, but they weren't used to the discipline they tried to show, and they were sitting next to the other ooze, waiting and mimicking their meditation. Keyword there being tried. She finally stood and tried initially to see the group off and go off on her own once again. That was until Gum mentioned the ooze conglomeration they saw the night before. "You caught one?" she asked in disbelief. "We have to show the elder. Come with me. I'll show you to our camp." And she led them down the cave to a hatch in the ceiling that opened up to an area beneath what appeared to be a massive lizard skeleton, covered on the inside with some kind of tarp to keep the harsh sunlight out. She led them to another hatch underground, where she had them deposit the being. She explained that they were escaping from the dome not too far out, where their kind is being experimented on and fused together like this. Her camp here finds these escapees and brings them here, rescuing them. And it wasn't long before the elder entered. A tall ooze formed in the shape of a tree. They reiterated the other's words and led the group to their office in the head of the great lizard, where he bid them look out the window. In the distance was a massive dome. It seemed to be attracting the lightning from the storm and drawing some kind of energy from it, and the ground around it was writhing with the motion of oozes, or rather ooze. One massive entity compiled together from countless others. Gum immediately volunteered to stay. They couldn't just sit by when their brethren were being treated like this. And Isaac explained his daughter's situation, and the elder sighed and shook his head. There's no way to cure it, I'm afraid, only to keep it at bay. He explained that there's a species of lizard whose blood will do this, but Isaac was dubious of it at first and asked the elder to bite him, taking the sacrifice upon himself, so that he may test this theory before using it to help his daughter. The elder did so and bid the group farewell as they returned to the city below, and Gum stayed behind. And that's it. I know there's a lot this week, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I kind of wanted to see these stories off with a bang, so to speak. Thanks so much for watching, and come back next week where I'll talk about some of the other responsibilities that a DM may have. Again, I'm going to keep doing DM advice, keep doing nice short videos. I'm just going to stop with my stories for a little while, but I'll try to get back to them as soon as I can. And until next time, let's learn something.